Did you know that the first black superhero wasn't in fact Black Panther, but a character named Lion Man? And that his story was one of 9 shown in the first comic book created by an all-black team, who were led by the first African-American publisher of comic books and, quote, the dean of black reporters? I know, let's get into it. Lion Man, a college-educated black man sent to Ghana to watch over a place called Magic Mountain and report on the doings of treacherous nations, was created by Orrin Cromwell Evans for a publication he founded called All Negro Comics in 1947. But even before then, Mr. Evans had a pretty impressive resume. Born in 1902 in Pennsylvania, Orrin had a relatively comfortable upbringing. And I say relatively because we're talking about the 1900s here, so for example, seeing as how Orrin's father was fair enough to pass for white, his dark-skinned mother had to pretend to be the family maid when people visited them. This even extended to hiding Orrin in the back room, or the father not being able to acknowledge his own son at his workplace, but I digress. Orrin got his first writing job at 17 and soon after was writing for the Philadelphia Tribune, or the oldest black paper in the United States. Then in the early 1930s, he landed a position at the Philadelphia Record, not only becoming the sole black reporter on staff, but also the first black writer to cover general assignments within a white newspaper. And he was fearless. He spoke up about segregation in the armed forces, which by the way helped end the practice, and criticized the government during wartime. But after the paper shut down in 1947, Orrin set his eyes on a new medium, comic books. He noted the lack of black heroes and saw a great potential in them for reaching the black community. Because yeah, sometimes a well-crafted cartoon goes a long way in making complex topics easy to understand. So Orrin teamed up with various black writers and artists to assemble socially conscious stories that cast black characters in a positive light, and thus All Negro Comics was born, with their first issue releasing sometime around June 1947. Their first editorial message read, amongst other things, "This publication is another milestone in the splendid history of Negro journalism. All Negro Comics will not only give Negro artists an opportunity gainfully to use their talents, but it will glorify Negro historical achievements." In addition to Lion Man, All Negro Comics #1 featured a private detective called Ace Harlem, Do Dillies, and other characters like Egbert or Sugarfoot. For the time, this was incredible because the comic was not only produced entirely by black creators, but it also presented stories where the protagonists were black, not white. It could have been the beginning of something amazing, but sadly, as you can imagine, All Negro Comics' boldness didn't go over well with the general white public. A second issue of the comic book was planned but never saw print due to distributors mysteriously pulling out and vendors refusing to sell it. It was rumored that on top of the blatant prejudice, white publishers had also conspired to undermine the company as a way to reduce competition for their own black-themed titles. Because after all, there was a market for black stories, but perhaps white publishers preferred producing their own black characters where essentially they could control the narrative. Thus, after the devastating end of All Negro Comics, black characters in lead heroic roles sort of disappeared from comics until, of course, the introduction of Black Panther in 1966. But even though Orrin Evans returned to the newspaper business and passed away in 1971, he left behind an incredible legacy. He created a space where black creators could tell their own stories and put out a comic book that flew in the face of the white hero default. He went against the grain during an oppressive era, so I'd say that although short-lived, All Negro Comics and Mr. Evans himself stand as defining moments in black American history.